The big room was full of strange sounds and smells. Ambassador Kate Morrison sat in her metal chair and tried not to show how nervous she felt. Around her, aliens from 12 different worlds talked in their own languages while machines turned their words into sounds she could understand. The Zephyrian delegate stood up on his four thin legs. His bug-like eyes looked at the big screen that showed human colony worlds floating in space. Kate could see the disappointment on his alien face even though it looked nothing like a human face. "The humans are spreading too fast through our galaxy," the Zephyrian said through his translator. "They are weak and small and live such short lives. They cannot survive in space like we can. Their bodies break too easily and they make choices with their hearts instead of their minds." Dr. Ben Carter sat next to Kate and leaned forward in his chair. His old face showed lines from years of fighting for humanity in these meetings. The other aliens never seemed to believe that humans belonged among the stars. "We have done well so far," Ben said in a calm voice. "We have built 17 good colonies in just 10 years. Our people are happy and safe on these new worlds." A deep laugh came from the Cronin delegate. The rock creature was huge and his stone skin sparkled under the bright lights of the room. When he laughed, it sounded like boulders rolling down a mountain. 17 tiny worlds that barely work," the Cronan said with another laugh. "The Zephyrians have built 300 colonies in the same time. Each one grows strong without needing help from their homeworld." Kate felt heavy in her chair. She spoke for all humans, but sometimes it felt like she was always in a courtroom where humans were the ones being judged. The other races had millions of years to learn how to live in space. Humans had only been flying to the stars for a few 100 years. Commander Jake Phillips stood at the back of the human group. He wore his military uniform and stood straight like a soldier should. Jake had seen what humans could do when things got hard, but the council only wanted to talk about what humans could not do. The meeting went on for hours and hours. Each alien took turns listing all the ways humans were not good enough for space. Travel, too weak for places with dangerous radiation, too picky about what air they could breathe, too quick to make choices based on feelings instead of cold facts. Kate listened to each complaint and felt them pile up like heavy stones on her chest. Maybe the aliens were right. Maybe humans were just not made for living among the stars like these other creatures were. The ethereal delegate floated above his chair without touching it. His body looked like it was made of blue light, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like wind through trees. "Humans need too much help to survive," the ethereal said. "They must carry their air with them everywhere. They cannot eat the food that grows on most worlds. They die if the temperature gets too hot or too cold." Kate wanted to argue, but she knew the ethereal was telling the truth. Human colonies did need constant supply ships from Earth. They needed special buildings to keep the air breathable and machines to make safe food. Other races could live almost anywhere without all these complicated systems. Delegate from the methane breathers made a sound like gas escaping from a pipe. The translator turned his words into something Kate could understand. "Perhaps humans should stay close to their home system," the gas creature said. "Let the stronger races handle the difficult work of expanding through the galaxy." Kate nodded politely, but her jaw got tight. She had heard suggestions like this many times before. The aliens always tried to sound kind when they told humans to stay home and let the grown-ups handle space exploration. As the meeting finally ended, the Zephyrian walked over to Kate on his forelegs. His compound eyes looked at her with what might have been pity. "It would be better for everyone if humans focused on their own solar system," he said in a voice that was supposed to sound helpful. "The galaxy is a dangerous place for creatures like you." Kate smiled and thanked him, but inside she felt angry. The message was always the same, no matter how the aliens said it. Humans were the new kids who had somehow stumbled into the big kids' game without earning the right to play. That night, Kate sat with Ben and Jake in the human quarters of the council station. Through the big window she could see stars scattered across the black of space. Each star might have worlds where humans would never be welcome. "They are not completely wrong," Ben said in a tired voice. Our colonies do need constant help from Earth. We cannot breathe methane like the Cronans or live in empty space like the Ethereals. Our biology limits us in ways that do not limit them. Jake shook his head hard. Biology is not everything. I have served with humans who did impossible things just because they refused to give up. That should count for something in this galaxy. Kate stared out at the stars and thought about all the worlds out there. Some had creatures that could live underwater forever. Others had beings that could survive in the cold vacuum of space without any protection. Humans needed spacesuits and air recyclers and temperature controls just to visit these places. The real question is whether anyone will ever see past our limitations, Kate said quietly. Ben rubbed his tired eyes. The Council judges us by what we cannot do instead of what we can do. They see weakness where we see challenge. Jake stood up and walked to the window. His reflection looked back at him from the glass with stars shining behind it. Maybe we have not given them the right reason to change their minds, Jake said. Maybe they need to see what humans do when everything is on the line. Kate wondered what he meant by that. In her experience, the Council had already made up their minds about humanity. They saw humans as weak creatures who had gotten lucky. Enough to build spaceships, but would never be truly ready for life among the stars. The three humans sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside the window, the galaxy turned slowly in its ancient dance. Billions of worlds spun around billions of stars, most of them home to creatures far stronger and more adapted for space than any human would ever be. But somewhere, in that vast darkness, human colonies struggled to survive and grow. 17. Worlds where human children played under alien suns and human families worked to build something new and lasting. Kate made a silent promise to those families as she watched the stars. The Council might see humans as limited and weak, but she would keep fighting for their right to reach for those distant lights. Even if the galaxy never understood what made humans special, she would not let them be pushed back to Earth like children being sent to their room. The meeting tomorrow would bring more criticism and more suggestions that humans should know their place. Kate would listen politely and argue carefully and try to make the aliens understand that humanity belonged among the stars, but deep down she wondered if words would ever be enough to change their minds. 3 months after the Council meeting where aliens dismissed humans as too weak for space, Captain Lisa Hayes was flying her ship through the dark between stars when the emergency message reached her. The words that came through her radio made her blood run cold. Colony 7 was going to die. Lisa stood on the bridge of her transport ship, endeavor and read the message again, hoping she had misunderstood something. But the facts were clear and terrible. A star in the Helix Nebula had suddenly flared up, sending deadly radiation toward everything in the system. Colony 7 sat right in the path of that invisible fire. How long do they have? Lisa asked her chief engineer, Ryan Murphy. Ryan looked at his computer screens and shook his head slowly. The radiation levels are climbing fast. Everyone on that planet will start getting sick in about 18 hours, maybe less if the star flares again. Dr. Amy Foster moved between the workstations on the bridge, checking readings on her medical scanner. What she saw made her feel sick to her stomach. The children will get sick first, Amy said in a quiet voice. Their small bodies cannot handle radiation like adult bodies can. If we do not get them out soon, they will die. Lisa looked at the star map on her main screen. Colony 7 showed as a small blue dot surrounded by angry red symbols that meant danger. 2,000 people lived on that world, including 300 children who had never seen Earth and thought of Colony 7 as their only home. How far away are the closest Council rescue ships? Lisa asked. Her communications officer, Tony Walsh, checked his long-range radio. The nearest ones are 4 days out, Captain. Even if they left right now and flew at maximum speed, they would not reach Colony 7 until after everyone there was dead. Lisa felt the familiar weight that came with being responsible for other people's lives. The smart choice, the safe choice that any alien captain would make, was to stay away from the radiation and wait for ships that were better equipped to handle the danger, but Lisa had not joined the space service to make safe choices. Tony, open a channel to Colony 7. Let me talk to whoever is in charge down there. The main screen flickered and showed the inside of an emergency command center. A woman with messy brown hair and tired eyes appeared. Lisa recognized Administrator Julie Stone, who had been running Colony 7 for the past 5 years. Captain Hayes, thank God you got our message, Julie said, relief clear in her voice. We have been trying to reach anyone for 6 hours. The radiation is already starting to affect our equipment. Lisa could see people moving quickly in the background of the transmission. Parents held their children closer while workers tried to keep the colony's life support systems running. What is your evacuation status, Julie? Lisa asked. Julie's face grew grim. We have emergency procedures for getting people off the planet, but our transport ships are too small. We can get the children and old people out first, but even with our fastest shuttles working around the clock, we cannot evacuate everyone before the radiation becomes deadly. Lisa watched the activity behind Julie and saw the fear in people's faces. These were not soldiers or space explorers. They were farmers and teachers and shop owners who had come to Colony 7 to build quiet lives under a foreign sun. Dr. Foster stepped up beside Lisa's captain chair. Captain, even if we cannot save everyone, we have to try. Those children do not have anyone else coming to help them. Lisa nodded and felt her decision forming like crystal in her mind. Julie, we are coming to get you. Start preparing your people for emergency evacuation. Ryan Murphy's voice carried across the bridge from his engineering station. Captain, the radiation will cook our electronics within a few hours of entering that system. We might not be able to get back out once we go in. Lisa turned to look at her crew. She saw the same determination in their eyes that she felt burning in her chest. These were good people who had volunteered to fly supply missions to the outer colonies because they believed in humanity's right to spread among the stars. Anyone who wants to transfer to one of our escort ships can do so now, Lisa announced to her crew over the ship's internal communication system. No questions asked and no black marks on your record. She waited for people to request transfers. The seconds ticked by in silence. Not one person asked to leave. Then let us go save some lives, Lisa said, settling back into her command chair. The Endeavour changed course toward Colony 7, leaving the safety of empty space behind. Every person aboard understood they were flying toward almost certain death. But somewhere on that doomed planet, 300 children needed them. As they flew through space toward the radiation storm, Lisa thought about the council meeting, where aliens had called humans too weak and too emotional to survive in space. Maybe they were right about humans making decisions with their hearts instead of their heads, but sometimes the heart knew things the head could not understand. Ryan worked at his engineering station, trying to figure out how to protect the ship's systems from radiation damage. I can boost power to the hull shielding, but it will only buy us a few extra hours. After that, the radiation will start cooking everything electronic on this ship. Amy prepared the medical bay for treating radiation sickness, even though she knew her equipment would probably fail before she could save many people. I can synthesize enough anti-radiation drugs for maybe 50 people. After that, we will be treating symptoms with whatever basic supplies we have. Tony checked and rechecked his communications equipment, knowing he would need to coordinate rescue shuttles while his radios slowly died around him. I have backup systems for the backup systems, but the radiation will kill everything eventually. We will be flying blind before this is over. Lisa listened to her crew prepare for what was probably a suicide mission and felt proud to serve with them. The aliens in the council chambers thought humans were too weak for space because their bodies needed protection from radiation and vacuum and cold. The aliens were missing the point. Human bodies might be weak, but human spirit was stronger than any radiation storm. The choice to fly into deadly fire to save children was not a weakness. It was the most human thing possible. As the Endeavour approached the edge of the radiation field around Colony 7, warning alarms began to sound. The ship's computers detected energy levels that would kill most galactic species within minutes. All hands prepare for radiation exposure, Lisa announced over the ship's communication system. Remember, we are not here to be heroes. We are here to get those people home safely. But as the Endeavour crossed into the radiation storm and the hull began to heat up from invisible fire, Lisa knew that being a hero was exactly what they were doing. They were showing the galaxy that humans might be limited by their biology. But they were unlimited in their willingness to sacrifice for others. The radiation hit the ship, like a hammer made of pure energy. Electronics began to fail immediately, and the hull temperature started climbing toward dangerous levels. Through the main view screen, Colony 7 appeared as a small world wrapped in deadly fire. 2,000 people waited down there for salvation. That might never come. But the Endeavour flew on through the storm, carrying 37 humans who had chosen to risk everything for strangers they had never met. The galaxy might mock human limitations, but it had never seen humans choose to step into flames for children who needed saving. The Endeavour shook and groaned as it pushed deeper into the radiation storm surrounding Colony 7. Captain Lisa Hayes gripped her command chair as the ship's hull plates creaked under the assault of invisible fire that poured from the angry star. Hull temperature rising faster than we thought it would, Ryan Murphy called out from his engineering station. Sweat ran down his face even though the ship's climate control was working perfectly. We have maybe 4 hours before our main systems start shutting down. Through the main view screen, Colony 7 looked like a cluster of glass domes scattered across the planet's brown surface. Emergency lights flashed red and yellow across the settlement, and Lisa could see small evacuation shuttles launching in desperate attempts to reach safety. Dr. Amy Foster watched her medical equipment and saw readings that made her close her eyes for a moment. We are all going to be very sick if we survive this, but we are still within levels that humans can handle for a short time. Lisa opened a communication channel to the colony below. Static filled the signal as radiation interfered with their radios. Julie, this is Captain Hayes. We have reached your system. What is happening down there? Administrator Julie Stone's voice came through the crackling static. Lisa, we have gotten 700 people evacuated so far, but the shuttles are having problems. The radiation is destroying their navigation systems faster than we can fix them. On Lisa's tactical display, she watched as one of the evacuation shuttles drifted off course, its pilot fighting with controls that no longer responded properly. Without help, the shuttle would crash into the planet with 60 colonists inside. Tony, can you guide that shuttle from here? Lisa asked her communications officer. Tony Walsh shook his head as he worked at his failing console. Our long-range communications are down to emergency power. I can try to help them, but the signal might cut out at any moment. Lisa made another command decision. Ryan, take us down to the planet's surface. We will serve as a communication relay and help coordinate the evacuation. The Endeavour descended through Colony 7's atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot from absorbing radiation. Through the viewports, Lisa could see the colony's main evacuation center where hundreds of people waited for rescue that might never come. As they landed near the colony, Dr. Foster's medical scanner showed readings that made her take a deep breath. Captain, the radiation down here is 3 times stronger than what we faced in orbit. We have maybe 2 hours before our bodies start taking permanent damage. Lisa stood up from her command chair and looked at her crew. Then we make those 2 hours count. Ryan, get our cargo bay open and start bringing people aboard. Amy, set up a medical station in cargo bay 2. Tony, establish contact with every shuttle pilot in the area. What happened next became a blur of desperate activity that none of them would ever forget. Colonists streamed aboard the Endeavour while Lisa coordinated with shuttle pilots, whose instruments failed more often with each passing minute. Children cried in their parents' arms, while elderly colonists moved with the careful steps of people who understood they might not live to see another day. Dr. Foster worked without stopping, treating early symptoms of radiation sickness while monitoring her own exposure levels. The irony was not lost on her that she was slowly dying while trying to save other people. But she pushed the dark thought away and focused on her work. Ryan Murphy discovered that the colony's main power plant was failing under the radiation assault. Without power, the life support systems would shut down and leave over 400 people stranded without breathable air. "Captain," Ryan's voice came over the ship's internal communication system. "I can connect our power systems to the colony's electrical grid. It might buy them a few more hours of life support." Lisa understood what he was really saying. Connecting their ship's power to the colony would mean staying longer, absorbing more radiation and reducing their chances of survival to almost zero. She also knew there was no real choice to make. "Do it, Ryan. Give them the time they need." As Murphy worked to establish the power connection, Lisa stood in the cargo bay and watched families say goodbye to each other. Some had made it aboard the Endeavour and would live to see another day. Others waited for shuttles that might never come. A young girl with dark hair and serious brown eyes tugged at Lisa's uniform sleeve. The child looked maybe 8 years old and reminded Lisa of her own niece back on Earth. "Captain, are you going to get everyone out safely?" the girl asked. Lisa knelt down to the child's level and looked into eyes that held complete trust. "We are going to do everything we can, sweetheart." The girl nodded with the solemn acceptance that children sometimes show in crisis situations. "My daddy says humans always try their best, even when things are scary." Lisa felt something shift inside her chest, a clarity that cut through all the fear and uncertainty. The council species might be stronger and smarter and better adapted for space travel, but they would never understand this moment. They would never comprehend the choice to step into deadly fire for people who could not save themselves. "Your daddy is right," Lisa told the girl. "Sometimes trying our best is all we can do." The evacuation continued as the Endeavour's systems slowly died around them. The ship's computers started making errors as radiation fried their circuits. The lights flickered as power systems struggled under the load of supporting both the ship and the colony. The air recyclers worked harder to clean radiation particles from the atmosphere. Tony Walsh performed miracles with his communications. Equipment. Guiding rescue shuttles through the radiation storm by pure instinct when his instruments finally gave up completely. He somehow knew where each craft needed to go, as if he could feel their positions in space rather than see them on his screens. Amy Foster treated radiation burns and sickness symptoms with supplies that dwindled by the hour. When her fancy medical equipment failed, she used basic first aid techniques that any medic would know. When those supplies ran out, she used compassion and hope, which sometimes worked just as well. Ryan Murphy crawled through radioactive corridors to manually control systems that no longer responded to electronic commands. His hands burned from touching overheated components, but he kept the power flowing to both the ship and the colony's life support systems. And through it all, Lisa Hayes stood at the center of the controlled chaos, making decisions that kept people alive even as radiation slowly cooked her from the inside out. When confused colonists asked questions, she gave them answers that helped them stay calm. When shuttle pilots lost their way in the radiation storm, she guided them home with words of encouragement. The hull of the Endeavour began to crack from the thermal stress of absorbing so much radiation, metal that had been designed to protect humans in the cold vacuum of space was never meant to handle this level of punishment. But the ship held together through determination and engineering skill and perhaps a little bit of human stubbornness. 4 hours into the evacuation, Lisa realized they had done the impossible. Over 1,800 people had been rescued from Colony 7, loaded onto shuttles that should not have been able to fly and guided to safety by equipment that should not have worked, but 600 colonists remained trapped in the outer agricultural domes, including families with young children who had been working in the far fields when the stellar flare began its deadly work. Lisa looked at her crew and saw exhaustion and radiation sickness and burns from overheated equipment. They had already given more than anyone had the right to ask. They had already proven that humans could accomplish impossible things when other people's lives depended on it. But 600 people still needed saving, and the radiation levels were climbing toward instantly lethal concentrations. The choice should have been easy. Save the people they had already rescued by leaving immediately, or risk everyone in a final desperate attempt to reach the outer domes. Lisa keyed her communication System one more time. All senior staff to the bridge. We need to talk. The bridge of the Endeavor felt like a tomb when Lisa's senior officers gathered around her command chair. Dr. Amy Foster moved slowly, her hands shaking slightly from radiation exposure. Ryan Murphy had burns on his arms from working near the overloaded power systems. Tony Walsh's console sparked and smoked as radiation continued to destroy the ship's electronics. The situation is this, Lisa began, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion she felt in every bone of her body. We can leave now and save 1,800 people. Or we can try to rescue the remaining 600 colonists in the outer agricultural domes, knowing that anyone who makes that trip probably will not survive. The silence that followed felt heavy with the weight of 600 lives. Through the bridge viewport, they could see the angry red glow of the stellar flare painting the sky in shades of death and destruction. Administrator Julie Stone had joined them on the bridge, her face showing the strain of making decisions that no person should ever have to make. She pulled up a handheld display that somehow still worked despite the radiation. The people in the outer domes include entire families, Julie said quietly. The Peterson family is in Agricultural Dome 7, John Peterson, his wife Mary, and their 3 children. The youngest is only 6 years old. The name hit Lisa like a physical blow to the chest. She knew John Peterson from years ago when they had served together on a supply mission to the outer colonies. He was a good man who had married a woman who made the best apple pie in the galaxy and had children who believed their parents could protect them from anything. Dr. Foster spoke first, her medical training forcing her to state the cold facts. From a medical point of view, attempting this rescue is suicide. We are all already showing symptoms of radiation poisoning. A few more hours of exposure at these levels will kill us. Ryan nodded grimly as he looked at his engineering displays. The ship's systems are failing faster than I can repair them. We might not make it back to space even if we leave right now. The hull is cracking from thermal stress, and our main engines are running on backup power. Lisa felt the weight of 600 lives pressing down on her shoulders like a mountain of lead. Among those people were children who had been playing in the agricultural domes when the stellar flare began its deadly work. Families who had come to Colony 7 to build new lives far from Earth. She thought about the 8-year-old girl who had asked if everyone would make it out safely. The trust in those young eyes had been absolute, the faith that adults would somehow make everything right no matter how bad things got. There is something else you need to know, Julie said, her voice barely above a whisper. We lost contact with the outer domes an hour ago. Their communication systems failed completely. We do not even know if the people there are still alive. Tony Walsh looked up from his sparking console. I might be able to reach them if we get closer. The radiation is blocking our signals, but at short range I could probably get through. Lisa closed her eyes and tried to think clearly despite the radiation sickness that was starting to affect her brain. The smart decision was to leave immediately and save the people they had already rescued. The logical choice was to accept that 600 people would die so that 1,800 could live, but logic had never been humanity's strongest trait. When Lisa opened her eyes, she saw her crew watching her with expressions that mixed resignation with determination. They knew what she was going to decide. They knew it meant their deaths. And none of them looked like they were planning to object. Tony, can you raise Agricultural Dome 7? Lisa asked. Walsh worked his failing console, coaxing signals through circuits that were slowly being cooked by radiation. After several attempts, a weak voice came through the static. This is John Peterson. Is someone out there? The relief in Peterson's voice was heartbreaking. Lisa took the communication unit with hands that trembled slightly from radiation exposure. John, this is Captain Lisa Hayes. We are coming to get you. Thank God, Lisa. We have 43 people here, including 12 children under the age of 10. The dome's life support is failing and we cannot reach our evacuation shuttle. The radiation fried its engines an hour ago. Lisa looked at her crew one more time, seeing the same resolve reflected in each face. They were all going to die, but 43 people would live because of their choice. John, hold on. We are on our way. As Lisa cut the communication, Dr. Foster placed a gentle hand on her captain's shoulder. For what it is worth, I think we are making the right choice. Lisa nodded, though she wondered if there was such a thing as a right choice in a situation like this. Ryan, prepare the ship for one more flight. Tony, plot a course to the agricultural domes. Amy, get ready for emergency medical treatment. Julie Stone stood up from her chair. Captain, I am going with you. Those are my people out there. Julie, you have a responsibility to the colonists we have already saved, Lisa said. And you have a responsibility to your own crew, Julie replied. But we are both going anyway. As the Endeavour lifted off from Colony 7's main settlement, Lisa knew they were flying toward certain death. The radiation levels at the agricultural domes would kill them all within hours. But somewhere ahead, 43 people waited for rescue, including 12 children who deserved the chance to grow up and see the stars. The flight to agricultural Dome 7 took 30 minutes that felt like 30 hours. The ship's hull continued to crack under the thermal stress, and more systems failed with each passing minute. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone feel dizzy and sick. Through the view screen, Agricultural Dome 7 appeared like a fragile soap bubble against the planet's ravaged surface. Emergency lights flickered weakly through the transparent aluminum structure, where 43 human beings waited for salvation that every law of physics said would never come. Lisa guided the dying ship to a landing near the dome's emergency airlock. The Endeavour's hull cracked audibly as superheated metal expanded and contracted, but the ship held together long enough for the rescue team to prepare. Radiation levels outside are instantly lethal, Amy reported. Anyone who goes out there will start dying immediately. Then we better work fast, Lisa said, putting on her environmental suit. Ryan, keep the engines running. Tony, maintain communications with the other rescue ships. Amy, prepare to treat 43 cases of severe radiation exposure. As Lisa sealed her helmet, she thought about the council chambers where aliens had dismissed humans as too weak and too emotional to survive in space. Maybe they were right about humans making decisions with their hearts instead of their heads, but the heart understood things that logic never could. It understood that some choices transcended biology and survival instincts. It understood that stepping into fire for children was not a weakness, but the most human thing possible. The airlock cycled open, and Lisa Hayes walked into radiation levels that should have killed her instantly. Behind her, her crew followed without hesitation, carrying medical supplies and rescue equipment toward a dome where 43 people waited for miracles. The galaxy might mock human limitations, but it had never seen humans choose love over logic, sacrifice over survival, hope over fear. In the end, that choice would change everything. The rescue of Agricultural Dome 7 should have been impossible according to every scientific calculation in the galaxy. The radiation levels were high enough to kill most galactic species within minutes of exposure. But Captain Lisa Hayes and her crew walked into that deadly fire anyway, carrying medical supplies and determination in equal measure. Inside the agricultural dome, 43 colonists waited in the flickering emergency lighting. The dome's life support systems were failing as radiation slowly cooked the electronic components. John Peterson held his 6-year-old daughter Emma while his wife, Mary, tried to keep the other children calm. When the Endeavour's rescue team entered through the emergency airlock, they brought hope with them. Dr. Amy Foster immediately began treating radiation sickness symptoms with her dwindling medical supplies. Her own body was shutting down from radiation exposure, but she ignored the pain and focused on saving others. Ryan Murphy worked to restore power to the dome's life support systems, his hands burning from contact with overheated components. The radiation was cooking him from the inside out, but he kept working until every person in the dome could breathe safely. Tony Walsh coordinated with the rescue shuttles using hand signals and short-range radio when his equipment finally died. Completely. He guided each craft to safety through pure intuition, somehow knowing where they needed to go even when he could not see them on his screens. And Lisa Hayes moved through the chaos like a calm center in a storm of death and destruction. When children asked if they were going to die, she looked them in the eyes and promised they would see their families again. When adults panicked about the radiation, she gave them tasks that kept their minds focused on survival instead of fear. The evacuation took 4 hours that felt like 4 years. According to every medical expert in the galaxy, everyone involved should have been dead within 2 hours of entering that radiation field. But humans had a way of ignoring what experts said was impossible. When the last shuttle lifted off from Agricultural Dome 7, carrying the Peterson family and the final group of survivors, Lisa remained at her station long enough to confirm that all souls were accounted for. Then she collapsed as her body finally gave in to radiation damage that should have killed her hours earlier. The Endeavour drifted like a radioactive tomb around the dying planet, its crew scattered throughout the ship where they had fallen at their posts. The hull was cracked and blackened from absorbing lethal amounts of radiation. The electronics were fried beyond any hope of repair. By all rights, it should have been a graveyard floating in space, but 3 Council rescue ships arrived just as the human vessel's life support systems gave their final gasp. The alien crews had been drawn by emergency beacons that somehow continued transmitting despite massive electrical damage throughout the ship. What the alien rescuers found changed their understanding of humanity forever. Instead of the panicked chaos they expected from a disaster situation, they discovered an orderly arrangement of survivors organized by medical priority. The humans had used their final hours to make sure everyone else had the best possible chance of survival. Dr. Amy Foster had died at her medical station, still treating patients even as her own heart stopped beating. Ryan Murphy was found in the engine room, his body draped over the reactor controls he had manually operated until radiation poisoning finally claimed him. Tony Walsh died at his communications post, his final transmission guiding a rescue shuttle safely away from the radiation storm. Captain Lisa Hayes survived long enough to transfer command to the senior council rescue officer. Her final words, recorded by the Zephyrian medical team, would be repeated throughout the galaxy for generations to come. "Tell them the children made it home," she whispered before losing consciousness. The aftermath of the Colony 7 rescue rippled through the Galactic Council chambers like a shockwave. The same species they had dismissed as too weak and too limited had accomplished something no other race had ever attempted. 43 people lived because humans had chosen to die for them. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood before the full council. Assembly 6 months later, her bearing transformed by tragedy and triumph mixed together. The empty chairs where her colleagues once sat served as silent reminders of the price humans had paid to prove their worth. "You questioned our place in this galaxy," Morrison said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "You made lists of our limitations and found us lacking in every category that mattered to you. But you misunderstood what makes us human." The Zephyrian representative who had once suggested that humans should stay in their home system now listened, with something that looked like reverence in his compound eyes. "Ambassador Morrison, we owe your species more than an apology. We owe you our respect and our understanding. What Captain Hayes and her crew did was beyond our comprehension." Morrison nodded toward the memorial display that showed images of the Colony 7 rescue crew. Their faces looked back at the assembly with the quiet dignity of people who had known they were going to die and had chosen to save others anyway. "Do not apologize to us," Morrison said. "Honor them." Captain Hayes and her crew did not die to prove humanity's worth to this council. They died because children needed saving, and that was reason enough. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of her words settled over the assembled delegates. Every species present had their own evolutionary advantages that made them suitable for galactic civilization. Enhanced radiation resistance, atmospheric flexibility, extended lifespans, superior physical strength, but none had demonstrated the peculiar human ability to transcend biological limitations through sheer force of will and love for others. "The question before us now," Morrison continued, "is whether this council represents the strongest species in the galaxy or the best ones. Because if strength is all that matters, then yes, humans are limited. But if character matters, if sacrifice matters, if the willingness to step into flames for a child matters, then humanity has something to offer that no amount of biological adaptation can replace. The Cronan delegate, whose rocky exterior had always seemed impenetrable, spoke in a voice that rumbled with newfound respect. We have been fools to measure worth by physical capability alone. The humans have shown us that true strength comes from choosing to protect others even when it costs everything. The ethereal representative floated silently for a long moment before speaking. In all our centuries of expansion through the galaxy, we have never encountered a species that would sacrifice themselves for strangers. This is not a limitation. This is evolution of the spirit. The vote to grant humanity full council membership and unrestricted expansion rights passed without a single dissenting voice. But more than that, the council established the Hayes Protocol, requiring all member species to provide immediate assistance to any human colony in distress, regardless of the risk involved. Years later, when galactic historians studied the colony, 7 incident, they focused on the technical aspects of the rescue. The impossible engineering solutions, the creative workarounds, the logistics of evacuating nearly 2,000 people under lethal conditions, but they missed the real story. The one that lived in the memory of every survivor and changed the course of galactic civilization. It was not about human limitations or capabilities or technology. It was about choice. When faced with the option to save themselves or risk everything for others, a ship full of humans had chosen to step into flames. They had shown the galaxy that some limits exist only in the mind, and that love can overcome any biological constraint. The Peterson family returned to Earth after the rescue, but they never forgot Captain Hayes and her crew. Little Emma Peterson grew up to become a starship captain herself, and she named her first command vessel the Lisa Hayes in honor of the woman who had walked into fire to save her life. Colony 7 was rebuilt in a safer star system, and a monument was erected to commemorate the rescue. The inscription was simple but profound. Here stood humans who chose love over logic, sacrifice over survival, hope over fear. In the end, the children made it home. The galaxy had spent centuries mocking human limits, dismissing them as too weak and too emotional for the challenges of space. It took one shining moment of supreme sacrifice to understand that some limitations are meant to be transcended, and in transcending them, humanity had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be worthy of the stars.